Welcome back to Fastest Learner Wins. I'm here with Goddess Rivera. Welcome.
Thank you.
You are the Global Director of Culture and Community at Twitter. You are not the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer.
I am not.
Can you explain the difference for us, please?
I really work specifically with making sure that marginalized voices on our service are represented, that we have a relationship with them, that they know who we are, what we stand for, and that the things that they care about the most, we are amplifying, we are understanding, and that we have something that is consistent so that as things happen with these groups, we are able to take those learnings back and I can spread them across the org to help us evolve.
And you also have a Twitter handle that says you possess Black girl magic.
I do. You know, it's interesting. Black girl magic is something that really was born out of the social media culture, and it goes back to kind of that original point of thinking through how people who come from an identity show that through how they show up in the world. And being a Black woman in advertising and now tech, who are often underrepresented, it's really important, I think, for us to claim our power and our magic when we're often excluded and skipped over.
So we hear about this, Goddess, this phenomenon called Black Twitter.
Yes.
Can you just, for the uninitiated, can you just explain what is it and how does it work?
So it's a really interesting question. What is Black Twitter? And it really is this, it's kind of a cultural phenomenon that takes place on Twitter. And it's a group of people who have kind of formed this very loose self-selecting community. And the way that they speak and connect and view the world and tell their stories is through the tapestry of Black culture. And I think it's important to understand that everyone who is Black and on Twitter may not always identify with or connect with this community, and same for people who may not be Black but totally identify with this community. But Black Twitter is important because what it did was allow a space for a historically marginalized group to really find their voice and push back against narratives in ways that they had often been very much historically excluded. And so I think it's really important and fascinating, especially being a Black woman who definitely feels a part of that community, to watch this group find joy when there were really hard times, to push back against what the narrative said we were, and to find our magic and show our power in ways that I think are just incredible, and that we had been doing as Black people in spaces that were very small, from barbershops to grandma's house to beauty salons, and now we could tell the world in this space who we were, and Twitter made that possible. It's just a perfect vehicle for that.
And Goddess, what brands are doing a good job of reaching this community, and what lessons can be learned from them?
I'm always incredibly impressed by Netflix. I think what Netflix did was really kind of unprecedented, because they really went to Twitter to find the voices that were making a lot of the connections with the community, and they took those people and asked them to create a space for them within Netflix around their content and around those conversations. And so you see that with Strong Black Lead, who's led by Jasmine Lawson, who's incredible. Netflix launched Con Todo, which is for their Latinx community. So they've really been digging into how to specifically connect with those communities, and you do it by having that representation.
Yes. So any advice for brands on how to deal with the feedback that we get on social media, both good and bad?
Yeah, you know, I often think about how much more brands today are becoming like people, right? And so I always say, like, which brand would you want to have over for dinner? Which brand would you feel comfortable having in your house? And for me, I stand behind the idea that everyone is equal, the idea that everyone deserves to have a voice. I'm never afraid to say that anywhere. And I think we're at that same point for brands. Even when the backlash does seem loud and scary, if you have stood up and said what you've believed in, then you're okay to stand in that. And I think the most loyal customers, the ones who do agree with you, will remain loyal and go with you on that journey. And I think it is risky as far as being scary, because we were kind of come up in a time when it was like, never discuss politics or religion, and don't make these big claims. But I think that time has left us, and people want to know who their brands are. They want to know who's in their house, who's in their cabinets, who's in their kitchens. They want to know that what they're contributing to is something that they feel mimics and mirrors their values.
Yes. So one of your other Twitter handles is you're a social strategy nerd. So I wanted to ask you about the future of advertising, where you think it's headed. So how do brands build trust and stay relevant as we move forward?
You know, I think that's what's so amazing about my position and my work and practice at Twitter. You know, I came and created this position, and they allowed me to do that by seeing the vision of what's next. And with that, I think it's really digging in and understanding people from a cultural perspective. I think we got really lazy in advertising where we were kind of just blanketing ads by TV, right? It was, you know, we're gonna put these ads on TV and we're gonna check the box for African American, we're gonna check the box for Hispanic or Latinx, and that is not, that one-dimensional way of understanding people is not how people wanna be seen. And so I think the way that we'll change advertising is by digging into that. You know, there is no US Latinx blanket. My husband is second generation Puerto Rican in Brooklyn, and he has a very different life and outlook than maybe someone who's from El Paso, Mexico, and that's just in the US. So
Right.
Trying to blanket them together is doing a disservice to really understanding them, and that goes for so many intersections from ways that we see ourselves. So I think the new way of advertising is for us to stop that lazy check mark and to use platforms like Twitter, places where people are speaking and being honest about who they are and telling people why it matters that I'm a person with disabilities. It matters that I'm a native, speaker or activist, and hearing that, and then really digging into how we can partner with these communities to create work that we all feel good about, and make that kind of those declarations that we talked about make us nervous, but feeling good about that because we are connected with these communities that way.
One final question. If you were a leader at P&G today, what would be one thing you would do now and one thing you would learn next?
Oh man, a lot of cool leaders at P&G I get to work with, right? I think the thing that I would do is kind of set up what I talked about before. You know, I've always championed that there should be a culture department in every single major advertiser, every agency, every tech company. There should be someone who is staying plugged into the different groups and communities that make up the entirety of who we are. And I think it gets lost in the skill. We set up departments by strategy, by creative, right? That's the skill of it. But who is really harnessing the knowledge and the connection and the relationships with people in these communities? And you think about someone like P&G, who's the largest advertiser in the world. You're serving everyone from socioeconomic to, all different ethnicities. So I think it should be almost this kind of knowledge group, and a knowledge group that is made up and representing the people that it's speaking to. So you have that kind of first party just perspective. I think something like that. I've always said, why doesn't everyone have a culture group? So I would be leading the culture group at Procter & Gamble.
So you do have Black girl magic.
I do.
I can hear it, I can see it, I can feel it. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for everything you're doing to help P&G and our brands.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. That's it for Fastest Learner Wins. We'll see you again next time.